Hi, this is Joe again with another movie review, and to continue with my series of doing Disney films, like a probably my last review with The Little Mermaid, which had a little controversy because of the with the perverted priest there, the horny priest. I'm going to do a film. I'm going to skip over, like I said in that review, Beauty and the Beast, because I refuse to see it. Angela Lansbury before the voice of Mrs. Potts in it. I don't have watched anything that Angela Lansbury has done because I hate her and I hate the show that she did, Movie She Wrote. So I'm going to do the next movie that came out after that, and it became a huge hit, and even a bigger hit on Broadway because it became one of the first Broadway show, and that's 1994, The Lion King. And this is definitely like the second. I think this is like definitely in the top three of the top three money-making films of 1994, behind Forrest Gump. And this is the top money-making animated film of '94. And this particular Disney film has a whole boatload of controversies with this film, which I will eventually get to, and of course which I will eventually get to. And this is also one of the longest, almost like an hour and a half long, so it's definitely one of the longer animated films in Disney Vault. And one thing that The Lion King does have for itself, it does have Elton John wrote all the songs, and he did perform two of the songs, Circle of Life and Can You Feel the Love Tonight. I forgot which one of the two songs won for Best Song, but I know one of them in the Oscars, the 1995 Oscar Awards. But as the film itself, it does have the best, talent, voice talent in this film. And that's about everyone who provided a top character, who provided the voice of a top character was a top name at the time. And they still carry a top name. Because you have James Earl Jones provided the voice of Mufasa, who was the original Lion King in the film. You have Jeremy Irons, who played the brother Score, who was the villain in the film. And Matthew Broderick played the oldest Simba, who also provided the singing voice. And for young Simba, it was Jonathan Taylor Thomas. You also had Robert Guillaume as the baboon, which is shown here. The baboon here. It also has the voice talent of Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marin as the two speaking hyenas. And also you have Moira Kelly, who was in the movie I previously reviewed, Cutting Edge, as the voice of Simba's girlfriend, or Simba's love interest. But as the film itself, The Lion King is the only Disney film that's based on an original story. All the other previous Disney films were based on a children's story or a fairy tale or some other format. So The Lion King was a brand new story, original story straight out of the Disney writers. For those who don't know the story, it's about the Lion King. The King of the Beasts is in the plains of Africa. And Mufasa, who, like I said, was voiced by James Earl Jones, is the king who rules the whole area called Pride Rock. And Score and his wife, or Mufasa's wife, just gave birth to a son, and he called him Simba. And so the whole big opening sequence was I guess you could say, the christening or a bris, if you be Jewish, of Simba, and how they presented him and named him and all that stuff. And Squall was not there because Squall was jealous, and now because his brother had a son, now Squall is never going to be king. And of course, Squall then conspires to first kill Simba, and that plan didn't work out. Then he decided to kill Mufasa, and that's when you had the big wildebeest chase. And because Mufasa does die, and Scar decides to blame Simba for it. And that's what one of the controversies is, having to be, because Simba took the blame, but instead of Scar was not only was he a real diabolical villain in the Lion King, but also was a very psychological villain. I mean, he used psychology to get his way, and used psychology to look. If it wasn't for you, your father would still be alive. Of course, Charles psychologist harped on that. Hey, you shouldn't blame the kid for this. And so Charles psychologist harped on that. Say, hey, that's not a right thing to do. Blame the kid for the death of his father. Well, in the way it was, even though Scar set the whole thing up. If Simba hadn't been in that situation because of Scar, Mufasa would have been alive because Mufasa went in to save him, and he got in trouble and got killed by the wildebeest, with of course because of Scar. Like I said, even though Scar set the whole thing up, he implied that Simba was to blame, and Simba took the blame and he ran off, and he found his two friends, Timon and Pumbaa, and Timon was voiced by Nathan Lane, and Pumbaa was voiced by Ernie Sabala. In case you don't know who Ernie Sabala was, for the Seinfeld fans out there, he was the naked guy in the Subway episode. When Seinfeld was going out, he falls asleep on the train, and he wakes up and there's a naked fat guy taking across from him. That was Ernie Sabala, and he was also in the first season of Perfect Strangers. So that's what he is. And of course, Nathan Lane was the voice of Timon. And so he matched with them, and then of course you have the big one, Hakuna Matata, which means no worries. And of course, Simba lives that lifestyle until, of course, when Scar took over. Practically allowed the lions and lionesses and all the other animals moved on because the whole plains were destroyed by the hyenas. And of course, Simba's girlfriend was, like I said, was voiced by Moira Kelly. Came into this area where Timon and Pumbaa were, and of course Simba defends him. And of course he finds out that it was Simba, but Simba was still alive because they recognize each other. He said, Simba, you're still alive. And then of course she tells Simba what's been going on. It's Scar took over with the hyenas, and you should be king instead of him. And no, but king is now. I said, why? Because it's my fault that my father's dead. And everything is my fault. And he didn't tell her everything. And then she tries to convince him that, hey, you should come back and fight for what's rightfully yours, and to fight Scar. And of course he sees and then of course eventually he sees the ghost of his father. Of course at that point you see the other controversial point, which I want to get to. I just want to give the general story first, and then tell you about the controversies. And then of course he does see the ghost of his father, and convinces him, hey, you are the true king. So then he decides to go back and fight, and then when he had this big fight sequence, and of course he had a big fight with Scar and Simba. Of course Simba admitted that it was his fault that Mufasa was dead. And then of course Scar does admit that he was the one who killed Mufasa. And then of course Simba got Scar to admit what he did. And of course in the end of the film, of course Scar dies at the end, and all it was reset as it was Simba taking over, and Simba having two babies of his own with his girlfriend. And that's pretty much how the movie ends. But now to the controversies. I only mentioned one already, but child psychologists came out of the woodwork complaining over the fact that Simba, the subplot of Simba getting the blame for Mufasa being killed. And if it wasn't for your fault, Simba would still be alive, and all that stuff. And of course, Charles Picard says, "Oh, you shouldn't blame the child for the death of his father." So, hello, if you see the story, yes, Score set the whole story up, but it was because Score put Simba in that situation. So Mufasa went to get him, and because Mufasa went to get Simba, he ended up getting killed. So you can understand why Simba took the blame, even though it was psychologically induced by Score, and the whole thing was done by him. But because of that, he got the blame, and you can understand why he got the blame. Even though Score, like I said, 50 times already, Score set the whole damn thing up. The other part that was a controversial part, and again, this stupid mother effing parent groups had nothing else better to do and then slow the movie down. And there's one particular point where it was after when Simba reunites with his girlfriend, and Simba is trying to figure out what he should do. He plops down on a cliff, on the top of a cliff, and a puff of smoke comes out. And in this puff of smoke, you see the word sex in the cloud, or in the dust cloud. And of course on YouTube you can see this thing, and I believe this clip is still up on YouTube, where people slow it down and you see the word sex in the Lion King. So because and of course this parent group said, oh, you can see the word sex in Disney, but your kids don't see that stuff. But when the kids saw it, anybody can see it. You don't even need to slow it down. You can see it. You can see it's playing this day. Like the horny priest in the Little Mermaid. You can see it's playing this day. All you have to do is pay attention to it, and you see it. You don't need to pause it or to slow it down, or move the video or the DVD frame by frame. You see it's playing as it knows in anybody's face. But that's the two controversies of The Lion King. And of course, like years later, like 10 years or so later, after the original release of The Lion King, Disney had a deal with the Times Square Alliance to make Broadway productions of the animated films. I think the first one was Beauty and the Beast, and then I think Hercules, or the movie Hercules, came out 3 years later, in '97. They made a world premiere of it by the Disney Store in I think the new Amsterdam Theater, which has a Disney Store built into it there. And of course you also have they have Beauty and the Beast, but you had Little Mermaid as the Broadway show for a while. And you also have I think Aladdin is playing on Broadway right now is the time of doing this video. And of course the longest running one out of the bunch is The Lion King. But like I said, The Lion King is still one of the best, and one of the better ones. Because I do like to, even though you have the annoying Whoopi Goldberg, the racist, she is a racist. Because when she picked her stage name, she could pick any name in the world. She had to pick a Jewish name. She's making fun of Jewish people. Like she's being anti-Semitic with a Jewish last soundstage name. Even though that's her professional name, she's being anti-Semitic because she picked Goldberg. And also her first name came out from Whoopi Cushion, because she liked Whoopi Cushions when she was a kid. So you picked Whoopi Cushions and an anti-Semitic last name for a black person, because you make fun of Jews. Anytime you mention, even though she doesn't specifically say anything anti-Semitic, she picked anti-Semitic because of her last name. Let me get that thing right straight out. But in terms of all the other, great, there's like top talent in this film, because when Disney made Aladdin in '92, they had a big name in Robert Williams playing the part of the genie. So I think since then, a lot of the top name Hollywood talent wanted to do Disney films, or doing voiceover work for Disney films. Because during the 40s and the 50s, even in the early 60s, you had young kids who were under contract with Disney Studio, when either through the Mickey Mouse Club or doing live action Disney films, they did the voice work of kids throughout the Disney films, like a Peter Pan and Alice in Wonderland and so forth. And you mentioned those reviews. In the Peter Pan review, you had people who are kids, like Bobby Driscoll, who was the voice of Peter Pan, was already under contract with Disney, making live action films, and you got cast playing the voice of Peter Pan. And the same thing with the girl who was the voice of Wendy and the voice of Alice in Alice in Wonderland, who was also under contract with Disney at the time. But since, like I said, since Robin Williams did Aladdin, he did a great job in that. They kept getting A-list talent to do the Disney films, and The Lion King is the king of the hill, point upon voice talent. When it was 1984, when I reviewed The Lion King, and maybe the next time I do a review of the next one that came after this, which was Pocahontas, which also had at least one A-list talent. Mel Gibson was in there, was the voice of John Smith, and David Logan Stiers, from MASH television series, was also in there. So that's my review of The Lion King. If you haven't seen it, you really, you can forget about the two controversies that I mentioned and really tune in to watch this. If you really want to have a good entertainment movie, when there was one controversy that I kind of skipped over, and there's this film, there was one particular sequence, one of the sequence when Mufasa dies, can be very intense for young kids. But another sequence with Squall reveals to the hyenas what his plan is. That's also kind of creepy. It's scary. So those are two scenes that you really have to be mindful about if you have young children. I'm talking about very young kids. I'm talking about like 4, 5, 6-year-old kids. If you think your kids can handle that, then you can skip The Lion King for those two scenes. But for the rest of it, it's perfectly fine. Except for maybe the last battle scene at the end. But for the film, it's perfectly fine. If you let me review The Lion King, please click on the video, please rate it, feel free to comment on it, please subscribe to my channel, and please forward this video onto your Facebook pages. Thanks for watching, catch you next time.